Alright, welcome back to Casual Folks. Sorry it's been about 2 weeks. Been very busy with work, and I was just able to carve a few minutes out to touch on a few topics that are happening within the market, what I'm doing, how I'm feeling, and we're going to address some of the bigger issues that are hanging over the entire economy and the market, and address some of the conversations that are happening within the media and try to extrapolate some information from that. So let's dig in. Since I last met with everyone, we've had an escalation in tariff negotiations, specifically with the United States ramping up tariffs against pretty much the entire world. We've had Tesla dealerships be set on fire, and we've also had the media kind of fear-mongering about the increased possibility of a recession, which, if you watched one of my previous videos, I think it's the first one, I think I said in that video that it's pretty unlikely that we would have a recession this year, but I have to admit that with these recent developments in the tariffs, the likelihood of a recession is a bit higher, but I do still think it's unlikely. I don't know if anyone was able to tune into CNBC either yesterday or the day before yesterday, when the market was pretty much melting down. I think it was on Tuesday. But there was an interview with the Apollo CEO, Mark Rowan, super brilliant guy. He touched on a few topics, especially topics that I completely agree with. That's why I think he's so brilliant. That this probably wasn't the right way for the administration to go about renegotiating the tariffs. But in my opinion, this blitz kind of negotiation tactic forces a lot of our allies and enemies, and possibly people who are sitting on the fence, to make decisions that definitely made it clear that which side of the fence they were sitting on, whether they were actually allies and were willing to work out and renegotiate deals that America felt was fair or in both countries' best interest, and that they believed that by coming to the table that they would get a fair deal, one that would be very good for both sides. And then there were other nations who chose to retaliate, and that definitely made it obvious where they stood in terms of their relationship with the United States of America. Now, that being said, the actual tariff numbers that Trump announced on Monday, I believe it was, that were supposed to go into effect at midnight on April 9th, or I believe it was a week ago, whenever the case was, that he announced that the math for those tariffs were just completely nonsensical. It didn't make any sense, and as someone who invests on behalf of himself and for my family, it's really difficult to look at those numbers and try to navigate and plan ahead, especially the fact that a lot of those countries were allied nations, and some of them we have surpluses with. But if you dig a little bit deeper and you just critically thought about why that was the case, then you would understand that a lot of the issues that are being negotiated aren't all about the deficit. A lot of them also have to do with issues that have been contentious over the years and have been, due to politics and lobbying, has been a slow grind to a solution. When the solutions could be simple, they're just too fast and too aggressive. And this is how this administration wants to actually get things done. Unfortunately, it is not the status quo, but if you want to get results fast. Sometimes you have to do things that are considered rash, and you might have to negotiate from your perceived perspective of strength in a dominant way, so that you may be perceived as dominant, even if in some situations you aren't the stronger party. What has been extremely reckless, though, as an American citizen, is the media's perspective of the situation. And some of the senators that are in America, especially the report that Governor Gavin Newsom said that he was willing to do bilateral trade negotiations with China separately from the rest of the United States, especially, I guess, any states that were supporting President Trump and his administration. The thing is that is very anti-American, in my opinion. And if you are trying to negotiate with a world power and you have members of your nation state that is divisive, that is creating internal tension, then you're giving the upper hand in that negotiation to the nation that you're negotiating with. And that's a problem, because in one of China's retaliatory tariff, they specifically said that they would only raise tariffs, retaliatory tariffs against red states. That is extremely divisive. That is allowing China to think that America is not united, and that goes against everything that an American should stand for. Regardless of our internal politics and our differences, when it comes to the way that we represent ourselves internationally, we should stand united. Now, I'm an immigrant and also a US citizen, and I have to admit that was a very disappointing thing for me to see, because this is where I've chosen to live and chosen to work. And if it is the nation's current opinion that we are not in a position of strength, especially with the dynamics of world powers shifting, we're in this period where we have a lot of geopolitical shifting of power happening, and in order for the US to remain relevant or to stay a prominent world power, we needed to reset some of these trade policies that we have with the rest of the world. Especially since we've seen a lot of manufacturing leave the country. Now, one of the biggest arguments is that and there was a skit that's circulating on Twitter, is that do Americans really want to make sneakers? We want to wear them, but do we want to make them? Now, this is not about sneakers, but could it be done? Yes. And if it could be done, should it be done? Probably, because if one day in the future, for whatever reason, the nations, the countries that currently make our sneakers decide they don't want to make it anymore, and as an American, do I really see the rest of the world as a sweatshop for my Nike Jordans, so that I can have fancy clothes, and have people in other countries be put into unsatisfactory work environments, so that I can get cheap labor to make my clothes, so that I can get cheaper clothes? It's so funny how people in first world countries think that it's okay to extort people in poor countries, and then say that by sharing opportunities globally, by going and building factories and polluting their environments, that somehow they're doing that the trade-off that they have is better. But we wouldn't even allow a factory to be built in our backyard because of pollution. It's just so strange that people think that argument would still be popular today. Yeah, I acknowledge that if one country can manufacture something at a cheaper price, that country will have an economic advantage in producing that particular thing, and then we would have something that we're able to manufacture and have some sort of competitive advantage, and that's how the trade deficits and trade surpluses are worked out, and the whole point is to get to a happy medium between the two nations or three nations or the entire world that are trading with each other, so that everyone is happy. Mutually beneficial agreement will, based on current administration, and for since 1992, both the Democratic, that's one thing I can say that both administrations throughout time have kind of agreed on since the 90s, that we have been exporting tons of jobs, tons of industries to China, which is the main goal of all of these tariffs. It's negotiating with the rest of the world to not allow, this is the non-tariff negotiations that are happening, that we do not allow, and they do not allow China to use their countries as loopholes to get out of paying tariffs in America, because that will still lead to not a fair result in terms of free trade with America. Where I also agree with Mark Rowan is the fact that he believed that the way it was done, just this global tariff of nonsensical percentages to get all these countries to the bargaining table, might have been rash and irrational and didn't make much sense. But at the end of the day, it produced results. Whether you think the results are fake or not, 75 countries reached out to the Trump administration, and then recently we received a 90-day pause on most of those tariffs because these countries reached out, and as a result the market rallied, and the only country that we really doubled down on tariffs were China, because they retaliated, and the EU because they retaliated. And why is the EU retaliating with tariffs? That's the other thing that I don't understand. Like, you're supposed to be one of our biggest allies in the world, and yes, you'll say, oh, we are the ones that first put these tariffs on, but there is a lot of non-tariff negotiations that the EU needs to be open to resolving. The one thing I'll say is I was very impressed that they were able to vote so rapidly on this retaliatory tariff, and then to backtrack it and then pause their retaliatory tariffs for 90 days. And they did it quite quickly, which I find is totally not the norm for politics in these countries. Now, a lot of this information also has to do with what believability rating you would give the government, this administration, etc. Some of my friends, when we talk, some of them lean more towards, actually most of them lean mostly towards not believing the things that any government says, and I don't blame them. But at the end of the day, this is where I live, and considering the idea that the government might be lying or misleading the American people is strange, but it's equally strange that the media is also misleading the public and creating fear and uncertainty and doubt in investors and business owners, and covering these negotiations in a way that would other risks out there as well, including the possible reemergence of the yen carry trade. Basically, just to summarize it really quickly, the yen carry trade is a lot of investors borrow money from Japan because they've had very low, historically speaking, very low interest rates, and those investors would borrow at those very low interest rates and then purchase assets that yield much higher percentages compared to the rates that they're borrowing from Japan, and they make money from that arbitrage. But recently, Japan has started a hiking cycle, a quantitative tightening period, and that could disrupt that trade, which could lead to a credit event. That would not be a very good outcome for risk assets and speculative assets, and could lead to rapid unwinding due to the leverage that's involved in that system, and that could rapidly lead to much lower asset prices and can do some serious damage. And that is a huge risk that is out there that all investors should be considering. The last time there was a taste of this happening was August 2024. What I'm hoping for as an investor, as an American, I'm hoping for a very swift and very transparent agreement between US, Mexico, and Canada, especially in regards to the non-trade related barriers that America would like addressed, including the stemming of or complete stopping of fentanyl across the US border, the reduction of illegal immigration that easily passes through Mexico, and definitely a crackdown on the cartels within Mexico, and any other agreements in Canada relating to our aluminum and other trade related agreements. I hope these get settled very quickly. I think that would be a great thing for the markets, a good thing for America, a good thing for Mexico, and a good thing for Canada. The European Union has to chill. They have to come to the table. If we have to reduce the antibiotics we put in our pig and our cows, then we're going to do it. And they have to buy it. We need them to buy it. We buy their stuff, they buy our stuff. That's how this works. That's how it should work. And finally, China needs to sit down at the table and assist America in some of these non-trade negotiations, non-trade tariff negotiations. We cannot continue to lift the entire world at the risk of degrading America and degrading American society. It's just not, it doesn't make sense. As bullish as I've been, or I was, those past 2 days, I do acknowledge that there is an enormous amount of risk floating around in the markets, and this what I'm saying right now, nor what I've said in the video so far, or any video that I've ever said is ever any sort of investment advice, but it is how I feel, my opinion, and what I've done. I'll probably never share what I'm doing or what I will do, but that is, I want to be as open as I can be without getting myself into trouble. And yeah, I just think that we shouldn't panic. Under any circumstances, we shouldn't panic, but we also shouldn't be overconfident. We should be cautiously optimistic. we should definitely continue to invest, but do not make any moves that might be considered overconfident, dollar cost average your way into the market or back into the market, or start dollar costing your way into the market if you haven't invested or you've never invested. Keep in mind, these are very high asset prices. Even with the correction we recently got, it was a nice correction, and as a long-term investor, it was a great time to be bullish. For anyone that isn't in the US, our grocery stores still have groceries in them. Our farmers should be able to service our local economies. We do not have to rely on international goods. That is my personal opinion. If worst case scenario, those prices go up as a result of our local farmers price gouging, that is extremely unpatriotic, but it is a possibility, and that might be something that will be addressed at that time. We will see. But for now, everything remains normal, and I want to thank you guys for joining me in this conversation today, and I definitely look forward to sharing some more with you as soon as I can. Like I said, I've been really busy with work and things outside of work, but this is definitely one of those priorities for me, and I'll continue to make videos as often as I can. For now, peace out, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.